Awesome. Well, good afternoon. Welcome again. Welcome back, I should say, to the Small Business Education Series, obviously with Chicago Transit Authority. Before we jump into today's week 2, just want to go around again really quickly for brief introductions. I think it does a few things. One, it reminds me of you all and gets me very familiar with our small business community. In addition to our presenters, it allows you all to introduce yourselves to them so that they can cater the conversation to the folks that's in the room, but also kind of connect the dots with some opportunities that they may have on their plate, to the opportunities, to the products or services that you all provide. And then, of course, it allows you all to get more familiar with each other, because that's an objective of this cohort, right? It's a cohort. We're a group. It's our little family for the next 7 more weeks now. So I definitely want you all to leverage each other, particularly when we have those conversations about teaming for contracts, right? So I'll start this afternoon. My name is Jamie Neely, yet again, the manager of the Small Business Development and Outreach team here at CTA. Where our primary focus is to support our DBE community. We have 3 primary customers per se, one being our internal users, right? So we want to advocate on you all's behalf when and where there's DBE opportunities. Second customer perhaps may be our prime contractors, making sure that we provide the support to them so that they can engage and invite and host you all as subcontractors. And then of course you all as potential subcontractors or DBEs. That come in many ways, through our technical assistance, our outreach events, educational programs like this, any and all things that we can do to make sure that you all have the best success in bidding, winning, and operating on CTA contracts. All of that being said, I will hand it over to my colleague, Chanel Harmon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chanel Harmon, and I'm the coordinator for Small Business Development and Outreach. I work with Jamie Neely as well as Juan Pablo.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll just go down the list as they're listed here. Oh, one other, Joe, can you hit the next slide for me? One kind ask for your introduction so that we can take attendance or roll call per se. Can you each put your first, last, and business name in the chat box right after you introduce yourself at any point, if you all can do that for me. But right now I'm just gonna call on you all's name to unmute yourselves and give a brief introduction, first, last name, business description, and any certifications that you all may have. Melissa, can I pick on you?
Yes. Good afternoon, well, good evening. My name is Melissa Fuller. I am the owner of MTC Properties One, and we are a real estate development company. And my alphabets are, okay, here we go, BEP, WBE, MBE, DBE, and BPED. That's for people with disabilities, that last one.
Awesome, you checked all the boxes.
Ah.
Now I'm gonna challenge you on this one, Melissa. I always try to make my clients distinct which M and WBE certification that you have. The reason being is because there's a public M&W and there's a private M&W, and depending on who you're speaking with, it may make a difference to them.
Okay, I wanna say that it's public because it's through the city of Chicago.
Yep, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming back. Obviously, week 1 wasn't too bad. Came back.
No, exactly, for more.
Awesome. Javier?
Yes. Yeah, my name is Javier Cadena. I'm a project manager, project coordinator from Studio ARQ. We are an architectural firm based in Chicago. And we are DVE.
Awesome, thank you. Mr. Aites?
Yes, how you doing today? My name is Richard Aites. I'm the owner of REA Masonry LLC. We're MBE, DBE certified, servicing the Chicagoland and surrounding areas. We're signatory with the unions and just looking to gain more knowledge, and good to see everybody again.
Awesome. Mike?
I'm Mike Say with Allstate Concrete Cutting. We're a union concrete cutting outfit. We do a lot of public and government and cutting. We do a lot of roadways, tollway, IDOT. We're on the CTA RPM project, doing all the coring and wall siding and all the concrete work. I'm a City of Chicago certified MBE and BEPD and DBE with the state.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Curtis?
Hello, everyone. Curtis Harmon with Fidelity Plumbing. We're a local 130 signatory plumbing contractor. We are MBE certified with the City of Chicago, BEP certified with the state of Illinois, and DBE certified with IDOT. And our main focus is on commercial and residential plumbing construction.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Divvy Logan?
I think she put some notes in there that her phone or her video and audio aren't working.
Got it. All righty. Well, thank you for joining us. Just make sure that you put your business name to Divvy in the chat inbox for us, just to make sure that we count you in for this evening. Sebastian? Sebastian? Can I pick on you? All right, I'll come back. Marina? Marina? Next.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was having problems. El Dominion Garces Contractors LLC. I am MBE, WB, DBE, and also BPE with Central Management with the state of Illinois. We do plumbing, water, and sewer, and also excavation.
Awesome. Thank you, Marina. Sebastian, I saw you come back on. Can I pick on you again?
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, this is Sebastian Durza. I'm actually with CTA's program management team, Transit Capital Partners. I'm the lead estimator, and I'm just here to give Joe a hard time.
Well, welcome.
Listening in and seeing how this training goes. So
I'll be sure to share the invite for next week to Joseph so he can come back and pick on you, Sebastian.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you. Next, we have Danielle with a Y. Danielle with a Y. No. Beatrice Steele.
Hi there, I'm Beatrice Steele, the sole member of Lawn Care Maven LLC, and we are an eco-friendly lawn care service.
Awesome, and thank you. Welcome back. Try to give Danielle with an S. Bob Whitman.
Hi, everyone. Bob Whitman. I'm also with Transit Capital Partners, TCP, CTA's program manager, along with Sebastian. So just here checking out the format of the training and listening up. So thanks.
Thank you, Bob. So they're having a sneak peek, guys. So just spoiler alert, they're going to be our presenters for next week. So we'll be kind and we'll be on our best behavior this week. So they'll return next week. Okay, guys. Last but not least, I have a JDAUM as a name. No, it went away.
He's there on video. He's muted.
Oh, got it. I see it now.
I just didn't turn on my microphone. I apologize.
Not a problem.
Also with Transit Capital Partners. My name's James Daum. I'm the acting program manager. I work with Sebastian and Bob Whitman. We have, there's 15 firms that make up Transit Capital Partners, 3 prime firms, 12 sub-consultants, and of the 12 sub-consultants, 10 are DBE firms. So we do have a responsibility to have a robust diversity participation on our team and to continue that throughout the length of the program, which is 5 years. So we're trying to learn how to help with diversity and get participation as we go forward, and to make sure the 10 DB firms on our team are well engaged in effort and have good participation.
Thank you. Those are the words that we want to hear.
Good.
And I have a telephone with area code 615. If you all want to join us and introduce yourself. Awesome. And did I miss anyone? Perfect. All right, guys. Well, today's agenda, really quick. Introduction, thanks for that. If you hadn't done so already, please go ahead and just put your first, last, and business name in the chat box. We'll begin every class that way. Unfortunately, there's no report that Zoom provides to let me know who's on the Zoom call each session. So if you can favor me in making sure that you put that information at the start of every class. Last week, we had some good conversation. We had Clark Construction join us. We talked about business opportunities. Where do you find the opportunities, how you identify, where you fit into the opportunities. And so I challenge you all to think about that opportunity method and where you fit in, and perhaps where you would go from there. Who would you attempt to market to? Would you set up calls with the agency or the prime, depending on the opportunity? So I'd just like to drive the discussion around that. Did anyone give it any thought in terms of where they are, their position, or their experience, based on if they went after a design build job versus if it wasn't a design build together? Just some conversation about what your opportunities have been, or perhaps what you plan for them to be in the future. And I told you guys I would pick on you, so. Mike, can you unmute yourself?
I'm on a design build right now on the red and purple line, and it's new to me. This is the first design build project I've been on. I enjoy it because it changes up so quickly. I like the thrill of the changes and the experience and the accomplishments every day. You know, we've gone to, normal coring is 2 foot and on full depth on a major core. Now we're coring down 20 and 30 feet. And so I've grown, I had to get the equipment to grow and get the experience under our belt. It's all going really good with no issues. And I like that. I like that change.
How was it? How big of a change is it from the design build? So typically, if it was a design build, so you're a sub to whom, right? Wash floor on the.
I'm a sub to Walsh floor.
Yeah.
I'm a first year sub, and compared to if it wasn't a design build, there's a lot of unknowns as we're going through. Like now, we started stabilization back in December, and the stabilization is tripled or quadrupled in size. Because of underlying factors with the soils and the processes done in the 1920s and 30s for the platforms and everything. So things change constantly. So I'm constantly rebidding different areas and different things, So plus the experience when we do get it, the experience of doing it. So it's a lot of change up from a normal, tollway work or roadway work or building work, or it's basically straightforward. This is a constant change, and it's abnormal things that you usually don't deal with. So it's a lot of experience, and I really like that part of it the most. Nothing's normal.
God, I don't know if that's good or bad, Mike, but
It's good.
we'll take it.
Fun. I like learning. That's why I'm here. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's, you know, it's stressful, but it's fun.
Now, sorry, and I may be repeating the same question, Mike, but I think what I'm trying to ask is it any different? Well, what's the major difference between operating or being a sub on a design build versus a build only?
Okay, I understand what you're trying to ask. When you, I'm sorry, let me turn that off. But when you're in a design build, there's a lot of unknowns from the beginning, from A to Z, all the way through. And the contractor, you know, the more unknowns, the more cost. You know, there's a balance there. Like a normal job, in the beginning there's some unknowns when you first start, but that fades away as the job goes on. And with the design build, there's unknowns all the way through the whole project, all the way through to the end. And so you have to be willing to adjust as a subcontractor constantly to produce for them and conform and you know, do well. So it's an interesting way of going at the work. But as a sub, I like it because it's defining us, our company, as what where we can go and what our capabilities really are.
Good. Thank you for sharing, Mike. One last question to that conversation, Mike. I think it just went away. I'm sorry. You said that it'll come back. Maybe. Anyone else want to share their thoughts or experiences on what their positions are and how you plan to strategize to get opportunities?
Okay, well, I'll share. Well, I'm currently, I mean, I haven't got out there yet, but I'm thinking I'll be out there by the end of the month at the Argyle station to perform some masonry work I have on the RPM project. As far as with the design build method, I mean, we've been pricing all 4 of the new stations that's going in. So I mean, it's crazy. None of the plans complete. You know, everything always updating and changing. I mean, a lot of stuff missing. So it's like, you know, it's kind of hard to put the bid together. You know, so you don't know if you're going in high, you're going in low, you're trying to get the most current information. And I think that's been a challenge for me, just trying to, you know, help with the budgeting process. You know, like I say, we don't really have no contracts on the bigger portions of the work, but we were included in the budgeting. So they reached out to us, you know, hey, Rich, can you help us with some of these numbers on some of these different scopes? Okay, yeah, fine, we'll do that, you know. And I think it's a good thing because you pretty much coming in from the ground up. You know, you right there in the beginning stages of the project when they developing the budget. So I mean, you pretty much seeing the project before it hit the streets. You know, I think that's good. And then you getting to communicate with the project managers, other tradesmen that's you know, that's looking at the plans as well. Other masonry contractors that's putting their input in. They ask the questions that I'm not asking, you know, and that's giving me more insight on the scope. So I think it's a good thing, you know, to be involved in the design build process. I like the straight build too, though. I mean, because you know what you're getting is there. Anything change is a change order. You know exactly what you got to do when you go on the door. I mean, the unseen can be good, and then it can be bad at sometimes as well too. You know, because you never know what you're getting yourself into. You know, if you're not pricing accordingly, you know, then you got to go back to the table again and renegotiate. And you know, hopefully you're dealing with some a good company. It wouldn't be a problem because they understand the difficulty and the work that need to be done. So I mean,
absolutely. No, thank you for sharing. And you actually you kind of answered what my question was to Mike, which was, what do you think was driving the unknown? But and I think what Richard stated, they're still planning, they're still developing as it's going along. So that's going to constantly, you know, charge the change. whereas the build, the design is already there. So you're just coming in and doing the work. So thank you both for sharing. I think hopefully that gives you all insight of how you position yourself, you know, the pros and the cons to both. You know, I don't think any are off the table, but perhaps you may, you know, be stronger in one pursuit versus the other. So just knowing what the opportunities are and how you align yourself with them, I think was the ultimate objective for last week. So thanks for that discussion, guys. And on to this week. The reason why you all joined us, we have Management at its Best with our dear friend Joe from Kiewit. We're going to dive into his presentation, and then he'll have some Q&A along the way. And of course, we will have the open floor at the end to address any other questions. Throughout the presentation, if you get the next slide for me, Joe. Throughout the presentation, at any point, drop your questions in the chat box, and we'll grab them as opportunities arise throughout the presentation, and of course at the end. Just a reminder of the housekeeping rules. Please keep your audio muted until called upon and or, you know, it becomes a discussion. Encouraging to keep your videos on, but totally understand if you can't. Want you to be engaged, so ask questions. We are bringing in these leading expert companies not only to provide this quality education from their experience, but also as a contact for you guys so you can get to know them. I always say by the time solicitation hits the street, if you're just now trying to build relationships with them, it's a day late and a dollar short. So here they are, take advantage, be engaged. And again, just a reminder to put your questions in the chat box. And we'll try to do a standing break at 5 o'clock, depending on where the presentation is, just to stand up and stretch to finish up the latter half. Good to go?
All right.
Head nod. Thank you, Joe.
So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Joe Sanfilippo. I'm a project manager with Kiewit. Kiewit does a lot of work for CTA, a lot of the track work, some stations and facilities work, and some things like that. I've been with Kiewit for all 12 of the years of my career. So I started out with them right out of college, and I've done the field engineering, working side by side with the subs all the way up to project management. And currently I'm working in our estimating office bidding projects, you know, for CTA as well as other owners around the state and the country. So I would be a great person to contact if you guys are looking for opportunities to bid work with Kiewit in Chicagoland. I can get you in touch with the correct people for any of those pursuits. So with that, the title here, Management at its Best, doesn't tell you a lot about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about safety and quality. And in particular, we're going to talk about the safety and quality plans. In my mind, that's a little bit too narrow. So I kind of stretched this out a little bit more to what is safety and quality in your company and your operations. So there's a few spots in here where I've pre-built some questions for participation. For those, I definitely want you guys to jump in. If we're in between something here, bear with me on the IT with the lag. I might or might not catch you, but like Janelle said, you can type the messages in there and we'll be able to see your questions. So with that, here's my first question is why are construction projects difficult to manage? I don't want to call on people, so you guys better start jumping in. Curtis.
Why are construction projects difficult to manage? I'll say a lot of heads, meaning it's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. So you got a lot of different tradesmen out there and trying to coordinate them and being on the same page is one of the things that makes it difficult.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people involved, a lot of thoughts. Elda, do you have audio? I know Elda, that's why I got to pick on her.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
How's it going?
Good, good. Okay, management difficult. First of all, you have to have the person with the knowledge to run the jobs, because if we don't do that, everything goes down the drain. So it's too many companies, especially you guys as the general contractors, too many companies, too many people to coordinate. Safety, obviously, is one of the biggest issues, that everybody's on the same page when it comes to entering, leaving, working, all that stuff. And me personally, that I'm tiny, the biggest is that all the people that are on the side know what they're doing. If they don't know what they're doing, we have big major problems. So for you guys, I'm assuming that you guys have to check the quality, the timing, all those things that come down to, for you guys to get that job going. It's so many things that could go wrong in one day, and everything trickles down. And I think that's what one of the biggest things that is so hard in management, because everybody has to run at the same pace and have and complete in safety, number one, timely, and quality control, everything at the same time.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things to juggle, right? And then if you guys have been working with CTA, especially in design build, I think Mike and Rich hit on the changes part really well. I mean, things are changing every day with the design builds. You might have partial information. There's so much that goes into it. But really, I mean, when it comes down to it, every one of these projects is unique, right? So you can go out and, do CTA track work once or twice. You can go out and build a masonry wall that's similar, but it's never going to be exactly the same, right? Standardization in construction is very difficult compared to other industries where, you might have a task that is completely repetitive day in and day out. So, the amount of skills and the variety of the work really makes it tricky and hard to manage, right? And then beyond that, when you go into a construction project, there's so many other things besides just doing the work, right? You've got government regulations, you've got kind of just people interactions. I think you guys hit on that with, the different personalities in the room, things like that. So there's just a lot of variables that go into construction. So one of the ways, we want to try and mitigate that is by building programs to ensure that you're getting, your safe performance and your quality work. And that's where your safety and quality plans come in. We're trying to take something that's, very unique and standardize what we can standardize about it to kind of build our efficiency and our ability to manage the process. So we're going to talk about safety first. And the first question here, what does safety mean to your company, and how do you approach safety on your project? So I think this one's for Rich first. What does safety mean to your company, and how do you approach it on your project?
Well, safety, I mean, we work at different heights. We might be on the ground work, we might be on the scaffold working. So, I mean, safety is always a big concern because you just gotta have different measures in place. I mean, we're working off a boom on one of my projects right now, and all my guys gotta have harnesses. They gotta be tied in. We cutting brick. We gotta have safety glasses. We gotta have cut gloves, hard hats. I mean, it's just important because of just the material we working around, and then just I guess just being safe. I mean, you just gotta be safe. I mean, what else can I say about safety? You want everybody to go home at the end of the day,
So that's exactly what I was looking for.
You want everybody to go home,
right?
You want everybody to go home at the end of the day, because I mean, I actually hurt my back in 2013 and on a project, and and I'm not gonna say that I wasn't working safe, but I mean, when you ripping and running, you at the end of the day, that's when it happens. At the end of the day, it happened at the end of the day, 3:15. We get off at 3:30. I hurt my back at 3:15, literally. And couldn't get out my car when I made it home. I was like literally stuck in the car position, like, oh man, I had to get help out the vehicle, and I ended up being off of work for 2 years behind that injury, just for you know, trying to, rather than just saying, okay, it's the end of the day, let's wrap it up. I'm trying to get the last course of block in, and I'm laying block over my head, knowing I should be laying at my waist. But, you know, some companies push you like that. You know, I was young and it happens, but I don't want to put none of the guys that work with me in that position to say, hey, you know what? I tell them, hey, man, just take your time, just do it right. You know, make sure you got everything you need, make sure the area clean. Any demo we doing, I want this cleaned up as we demo. I mean, I don't want no debris, nothing standing around, laying around. I mean, because you got other companies walking around. What if somebody trip, fall, break their leg, anything? And then we liable for that because we got rubbish everywhere, you know? So, I mean, just good housekeeping. It's just a lot of different factors in safety. So, I mean,
So I heard a lot of good stuff in there. And the first one I want to highlight is, what does safety mean to your company? Most simply, it means that your men and women are going home, right? That's why we're doing what we're doing. Then you talked a lot about engineering controls, right? And PPE, right? How do you make sure that you can work safe at height? How do you make sure that you have the proper protections for silica or eye protection when you're cutting or whatever else it is? You know, so that approach to safety is really providing your men and women with the tools to be able to go home at the end of the day. And what does safety mean at the end of the day is that you're going home, but it also to your company is going to mean other things. It's going to mean productivity. It's going to mean reputation, right? There's a variety of positive feedback loops with safety where when you're operating safe, your guys are having all the tools they need. Your work is well planned out. You're going to realize productivity gains. Your safety is going to, you know, spread out so that the craftsmen know that you're a company they want to work for, and general contractors are going to know that you're a subcontractor that they want on your job, right? So safety, you know, most simply means send people home the way they came to work. But beyond that, it means a lot of other things to your business in terms of your ability to grow and represent yourself. So on a CTA job here, your general contractor is usually going to be responsible for providing the CTA with a safety management plan. You always want to make sure you get a copy of that and understand, you know, what commitments they've made to the CTA and how that project's going to run. But beyond that, you should have a company plan of what your expectations are, whether you're working for CTA or whoever else. And when you go into a CTA job and you're developing one of these safety management plans, I'm going to have to take a step forward here and say, pretend you guys are the GC, because you may or may not submit a safety management plan as a subcontractor. But if you were a GC, or if you were taking on a small task order with CTA that you were running yourselves, you know, and CTA expected you to submit a safety management plan, you know, basically what it is going to do is combine a plan that's specific to the project. You know, that's going to incorporate your company's safety rules, regulations in your company plan. It's going to incorporate the CTA safety manual. You know, anybody that's worked on CTA knows that there's, you know, specific precautions and specific procedures and policies related to working around live tracks, working around third rails, you know, working around trains or pedestrians or the public that you're going to encounter on a CTA project that you may not encounter on others. You're going to have to incorporate the regulations from OSHA most simply, but other agencies, right? So depending on where you are and what you're working on, there may be a variety of rules and regulations that you have to kind of distill down and communicate to your project team to make sure that they know what the expectations are. So what goes in the safety management plan? Some kind of basic stuff here. You're going to get a cover page. It's going to be signed off by management, the safety manager, project manager, and whatever executives in charge of the job. You're also going to have a safety policy statement, which is going to represent really your commitment to safety and what the expectations are for that project. You'd be expected to provide an organizational chart where contractor and subcontractor personnel that are responsible for safety are identified. A lot of times it will have something that, you know, we like to call a zipper plan, where those people are connected with whoever their GC counterparts are. So, as a subcontractor on a major project, you may have your safety manager. You want to know who the safety manager is with the GC, as well as who the safety representatives are from CTA or their consultants, whether it's the program manager or the consultants working on the project for CTA. So there's a whole safety organization that is identified, with that organization chart, and everybody knows who's responsible and what that looks like. So one of the things as a subcontractor that I'd say is I encourage everybody to make sure that a person from your company is designated as your on-site safety representative, whether or not that's required by the contract. Is that you want to have someone on site that's responsible for safety, whether that's a foreman or a lead man or a project manager, superintendent, whoever's out there day to day, that your people know that's the person that they can talk to related to safety, and that they can communicate things upward as necessary. The next thing that you have in there is kind of a comprehensive description of the project that really addresses the top hazards of your job. So when you're looking at that, these are going to be some very specific things that are meant to mitigate the risks on your specific project. And then finally, as a GC, we would provide this. If you were running your own program, you may provide it as well. If you were required to provide a contractor safety engineer, you'd be explaining what that person's responsibilities are and expectations are of their role. And I know on a lot of smaller projects that person may not be a dedicated 100% safety. That again might be your foreman or your project manager or superintendent or someone on site with the power to make changes and make sure that the work is going on safely. So here's an example just so you guys can say you've seen one there. Everybody on the project team signs off on the plan. It's reviewed by all these people. All that input is taken in. And then here is just kind of an example of what we would consider our major specific hazards. And this plan is written to specifically address these, right? So this example is a elevated track job. So one of our primary risks was working at heights. And we made sure that we had everything in place to tie off correctly, that the engineering was done to show where we can and cannot tie off, how many people could tie off within given lengths of areas, and make sure that we can provide that protection throughout the project. Secondly, equipment operations tends to be a very big risk on a CTA project. A lot of times you're in a restricted corridor or a limited work area. So struck by injuries are very high risk. Kiewit ourselves, we have fatalities related to struck by equipment in Chicago, even where you have just equipment moving around in a yard, and that is a very high risk operation. Trains and third rail, same thing. There's countless stories of struck by train or electrocuted by third rail throughout the history of working on the railroad. CTA has a lot of plans and procedures in place to work safely in these conditions. And you want to make sure that those are specifically addressed to your project and how you're going to work around those. You may have things such as lockout, tagout, third rail shields, a variety of other protections that you might put in place. Public safety is always a big one on CTA jobs. We're usually working near, we're in an active station. We may have active trains going by us, so making sure that we have the right mitigations in place to protect the public around our work. And finally, cranes. Anytime a crane shows up on a job, there's a whole new set of risks within that work. So I'd like to open it up a little bit here and kind of look at this list and maybe chat a little bit about some of these and what are some ways that we mitigate these hazards. So Mike, I think you said you're a saw cutting company. So I guess cutting, grinding, welding, like let's just talk about some things that you can do to mitigate, your safety hazards when you're dealing with something like that.
Can you say it once more?
Yeah, so I got a list here of a variety of hazards that we may address on the job. So I just want to kind of make this a little bit interactive. So I'm going to pick on a few of you guys here, just talk about like what some mitigations would be, to protect your people in terms of some stuff on this list. I picked out cutting, grinding, and welding for you. Cutting and grinding in particular, what kind of mitigations could you put in place to protect your people?
Well, with cutting, you can have a shield or a blade cover. A lot of times with the dust and the stones and everything else, you have the water. You use water, but then you have to be careful what the surroundings are. You're around electrical. There's a lot of preparation, looking at where you're at all times, what the safety issues are going to be, and address each one like you were saying. So with the cutting, that would be it. With grinding, it would be the same thing. With the grinding, you'd have to have a shield, and then you got to look at safety glasses, and is it hot? Are you around something hot? All those different things come into play. And what we try to do is we try to have our meetings at the shop to keep our employees up to speed with all the questions and answering of how things come about. Accidents, meaning usually it happens because somebody's not paying attention to detail.
Sure.
Or they're in a hurry. Somehow they think they need to be in a hurry. And with safety, we all know that with the safety part, there is no mulligans with that. You can't go back and try it again.
Right.
We've been pulling at 1.91 for 5 years straight now in our EMR. And that's all, again, it's education and talking with your employees and going over all the different issues that could arise, and education.
Right. And then one good one to talk about there is kind of how regulations change, right? A couple of years ago, the OSHA, table one, the silica deal, right?
Yep.
So,
and they have to get fitted, and we take all our guys and we bring an instructor in, and they get fitted, and then they get checked. And then they have the little question and answer sheet that they have to fill out. And yeah.
So as you were developing a safety management plan for a CTA job, all those things you're talking about, documenting and listing those out and building those job procedures. Here's how we're going to handle, our silica. Everybody's going to be fit tested. We're going to wear these type of respirators following table one. If we're working less or more than 4 hours, we're going to have different mitigations. All that information, that's what we're going to use to build, your job specific safety management plan, right? You want to, deal with some of these other things on here. You talked about environmental hazards in terms of if there's electrical around, maybe I can't use water. Maybe there's something else I have to do, vacuums. One thing that you didn't really talk about, but I know is a big deal with saw cutting is the noise, right? So how are you doing ear protection? What are you doing, in terms of maybe you have some awkward cuts to make? You have to talk about body positioning. I think Rich mentioned this, he was laying blocks over his head, right? That's not how we want to work. You want to work in the strike zone. You want to have your hands kind of where you're in your best ergonomic positions. So there's a variety of things here. This is by no means comprehensive, but if any of these things apply to your work, those are the type of issues that you would want to address in your safety management plan. If you're working at heights, what are we doing for fall protection? What type of harnesses are we going to wear? Where are the guys going to tie off? Is that point engineered? Some of the other different things that tend to be big hazards people don't think about is material deliveries. How are you unloading that truck? Where are you getting the equipment from? How is the truck going to be loaded when it comes to your site so that you can safely unload it at the location? A lot of these CTA jobs are in tight, congested urban areas. You're not just going to walk up to it with a loader half the time. You're going to have to plan out where that truck's going to be staged. What kind of MOT do you need around you to make sure that the traffic is controlled? There's a variety of things here. But if I could just highlight a couple of them, that are specific to your work, that's what you're going to want to address in your safety management plan. So we kind of talked through some of this. Does anybody here do job hazard analysis on their tasks? Curtis, have you done job hazard analysis?
No, not at this time.
Yeah, so a lot of times when you're working for CTA, what you'll have is you'll have to produce a work plan or a process plan related to your work. And one of the documents that's required is a job hazard analysis. Is there anyone else out there that has done one that can jump in and help me here?
Richard? You say yes?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we got to do our JHAs like daily, more specific. I mean, more tailored towards our specific function that day. So I mean, if we doing some grinding and pointing that day, then we'll list them specific. We'll list the detail. Okay, this is what we got to do, and then we'll list the hazards associated with each detail. And then they usually want the signatures of all the employees that's going to be associated with the work, the hazards, the preventative measures, the safety equipment that you're going to use. So, I mean, just a lot of different things. I mean, all the JHAs is different. So, I mean, but normally that's kind of what's incorporated into it, your detail, your hazards associated with the detail, your preventative measures, your safety, your PPP that's required to do the work. All the employees that's associated with work need to sign off on that, and it needs to be turned in daily and then signed by the foreman or the competent person.
Yep, that's all right. So that's what you would do basically when you're planning your work for a CTA job, where you will be submitting a process plan. You'll develop a job hazard analysis ahead of doing the work, and then when you go out to do the work, you will update and revise it, to be specific to what you're doing that day. But the point of it really is to stop and think about what you're doing that day and what kind of mitigations you can put in place to prevent those hazards from happening, occurring on your project. So it may be something like having PPE. It may be an engineering control like having a handrail in place. Whatever it is, it may be having the right tool for the job, to have a shroud or a guard, to have a vacuum if you're dealing with silica, to have the correct ventilation. If got a couple plumbers in here that are, if you're dealing with pouring lead joints or something like that, how are we handling the fumes and making sure that we have the right air in place? All those types of things that may come up. Job hazard analysis is just a way to kind of list out step by step, what am I doing today? How can I get hurt? What's the worst thing that could happen to me? And how can I mitigate those things? So you'll have job hazard analysis for all the variety of work plans that you have on the project. The next thing you have in one of these safety management plans would be an emergency response plan. So what are you doing when you have a serious emergency? Who needs to be called? Where are the nearest hospitals? Who among the project staff needs to be called? So for your purposes, it may be, who do I need to contact at the GC? Who does the GC need to contact with CTA or whatever consultants are involved? Who needs to make the call for 911 or ambulance? Where are the hospitals located? What are you doing, in the case of an emergency? When you're working at heights, or if you're working in the subway, it may involve, how do you get somebody out of their situation and to safety, right? If you have a situation with fall protection where someone might be wearing a harness, that's great. That's the first step. They have a harness. But the second step is, if they fall, how are we getting them down? Where are they going to be located, within the structure? Is it somewhere that I can access with a man lift to be able to retrieve the person? Is there a different type of hazard that comes down the line there? So you want to have developed an emergency response plan. And as we're talking about this, I want you guys to think about it two ways. One is if you were the GC or if you were running your own small piece of work for CTA, you would need to produce something like this. But the second thing is that every GC that you work for on a CTA system has these documents. So are you asking for these things so that you have access to it, so you know what the planning is and what the plan that has been done, and how that applies to your people, so that you're knowledgeable about what's going on there. The next thing on the list there is safety meetings. So, are we having a daily toolbox talk? Is there going to be a once a month get together through the whole job where everybody gets together to talk about what's going on the job? You want to have that listed out and formalized so it's clear. And that's just an expectation that CTA has, that you will be having those meetings. Project specific programs. So with Kiewit, we have a couple things that we do that are not required by contract, but are things that we do throughout our company. Other contractors might have different things as well. And your company may have things that you want to do as well. One of them I'll talk about from Kiewit's perspective is craft voice and safety. So on each of our major projects, we assign what we call a civis person, who's a tradesman, not a foreman, not a company guy necessarily, just someone that the craft feels comfortable talking to, and that's a civis designee. And then that person's responsibility among doing their work is also to be a conduit for information. So if there's a problem or an issue on the job or a suggestion that someone has, this person is elevated and identified as someone that they can talk to if they don't feel comfortable going to talk to management. And then that person has the direct ear of the project management. So they, it may be a laborer journeyman that meets with the project manager every day and talks about what's going on the job. And that guy is just a separate kind of conduit and a voice for the craft to be able to communicate, vertically through the company if they don't, maybe want to talk to a foreman or a superintendent or whoever that might be. Other times we've done things, different types of programs along those lines. Safety Champions, another one that we had prior to Civis, where someone was identified for going above and beyond in safety. And then that person, maybe at the next week's toolbox talk or at a kind of bigger event might be identified for how they work safe or how they are an example to the company. The next thing that you'll need to have in there is details on what you're doing for safety orientation, right? How are you indoctrinating the people into the project, right? So on a Kiewit job, a lot of times, we'll do a 4 or 8 hour orientation where we'll go through the rules of the job, what the expectations are. But I think the safety orientations are most effective when they're task specific, right? So if you have a new tradesman coming into your job, setting up a specific check-in where he needs to go and spend an hour with the foreman going over, here are the tools that we use for our job, here's my safety expectations for how you're going to perform in your role, things like that. Hands-on, one-to-one orientation of your craftsmen. Next one, drug and alcohol use policies. So you want to have those written down in black and white. You don't want there to be any ambiguity in what you're doing with how you're representing that to your people and what the discipline or enforcement is going to be there, right? So putting it here in black and white in your plan takes that ambiguity out. Whether, what your tolerance is going to be, what the penalties are going to be, what the expectations are, having that written out very plainly for your project, right? And that's something that we review with all of our craftsmen upon that orientation to make sure that those expectations are clear. Safety training, what the project is going to be doing in terms of safety training. And this is something that doesn't need to be overthought, right? It could be as simple as your morning toolbox trainings, talking about the hazards of the tool you're going to be using for that day. It could be something more formal, right? Are your guys going to get, OSHA 30 trained? Will they be HAZWOPER trained? what kind of trainings do you need to do on the equipment that you may be using? Now, do you need to have some kind of third party come in to show you, what the proper procedures are? A lot of times with fall protection, we'll call out the fall protection suppliers and we'll do fall protection training where the guys will be fitted for their vests or fitted for their harnesses. And we'll make a whole day out of it. They'll do training explaining how the fall protection works, what the limitations of the systems are, how to put the equipment on properly, things like that. You may have other technical trainings related to the types of tools you're using where, maybe Bosch or Hilti or DeWalt can come out and do hands-on training with, here's how we expect to use our grinders or drills or whatever it might be. Safety inspections. On a smaller job, this may be something where it's as simple as the foreman is responsible for safety inspection. He's going to do a documented inspection once a week. On a bigger job, it may involve owner tours where, the GC, a subcontractor, and the client, whether it's CTA or whoever, might come out and tour the work as a group and document that. Incident investigation and reporting. So this is really documenting what are your procedures when there's an incident. How is that chain of command going to happen? One, to report the incident, but two, to investigate, figure out what's going on, and understand what the root causes are, right? One of the tools we use for that is called 5 Whys. So that's something that you guys could look into as a very simple way of analyzing a problem. It's saying, all right, so an issue happened. Why did that issue happen? You ask that first question, you might get 2 or 3 answers, right? So maybe the issue is that someone cut their hand. And, one of the whys might be, they weren't wearing gloves. Okay, so that's an easy place to stop and say, the guy needs to wear his gloves. Well, why wasn't he wearing his gloves? So you've asked why twice now. You say he wasn't wearing his gloves because he didn't have them, because they got dirty, because they weren't easily accessible. They were locked away in his truck, because the task that he was doing didn't work well with the glove he had that day. So when you ask those next whys, it's not as simple as put your gloves on. It becomes maybe, hey, we need to buy a different glove for this process, or we need to make the PPE more accessible. It needs to be in a better spot. Or, hey, it was raining that day, we needed waterproof gloves. Or, hey, maybe this guy is continuously not wearing his gloves and he's not buying into our safety culture and he doesn't have a spot here anymore, right? And that's where the 5 Whys comes in, is trying to get more deep than is the surface problem the problem, or are there things deeper than that we need to talk about? SDS and hazard communication. So how are you dealing with hazard communication on your project, making sure that everybody understands, what type of chemicals or products they're dealing with and the hazards that are there. There's a lot of regulation surrounding this. So it's pretty simple that you need to have that information accessible for the craftsman. So how are you going to implement that? Is that, printing out the book and having it in the toolbox? Is it having some kind of app or something that they can access electronically? There's a variety of ways. And then finally, kind of in a bigger, higher level look, what are we doing for safety document management and record keeping? For the GCs, this is a big deal in terms of, things might come up, 2, 5, 10 years down the road. Do we have the documentation in place? 1, to protect your company, but 2, to have that transparency, for whatever regulations might be in place. And then finally, whatever sample forms, whether it's a job hazard analysis or an inspection checklist, those things are all included in your safety management plan. We do on time. We're at 5 o'clock here. Looks like my JHA didn't come through that well here, but we talked about this a little bit. Not as fun without being able to see it completely there, but basically what it is, it's a step-by-step plan. You want to have any of the risks on there that need special planning. You know, we've talked about a lot of them here, you know, dust control, fall protection, cranes, things like that. Working around trains or like a third rail, lockout, tag out, whatever other hazards might be involved with your specific operation. One of the important things to analyze with your job hazard analysis is how are you getting to your work? You know, do you need a scaffold? Do you need a ladder? If you're working in a trench, what does that look like? Do you need to have, you need to have your access every, 50 feet, 25 feet in each direction? Whatever other type of access you need there. Maybe you're working on an elevated structure. How's your material and equipment getting up there? Do you need a crane? Do you need a man lift? Are guys going to be manhandling things up a stair tower? Other unique PPE that you might need. We kind of talked about a lot of that. Do you have the right type of gloves? Do you have face shields? Do you have the correct goggles? Do you have the right tools for the job? And we talked about ergonomic risks before. All those are things that you want to make sure you address in your JHA. And then really most simply, it's you want to answer these questions is, what is the worst thing that could happen, right? What can kill me today? And you want to mitigate those hazards. And then on the other side of the coin, how are you most likely to get hurt? What is the most common thing that's going to happen? Am I going to pinch my finger? Am I going to cut my hand? Am I going to get debris in my eye? And how do you mitigate those hazards? And any other issues that need to be discussed in terms of that operation. Now, one thing that we found that really works well is making sure that the crew is heavily involved in these JHAs, right? Is that getting out to the field? Are you talking about it at your toolbox talk? Are you talking to guys and saying, hey, what kind of hazards did we run into yesterday that we didn't have on this hazard analysis last week, but we want to have on here now, and going forward, it's going to be something that we're going to talk about. And then another nice thing to do is provide pictures with your JHA. A lot of times, it's hard to explain to someone, hey, don't step here, but you can take a picture of the location and say, see this space between a piece of equipment and a wall? We don't walk there. We're going to walk on the other side where there's 10 more feet. And then finally, making sure that these things are reviewed in the field and that it really gets down to the craftsman's level and that you're training your guys on that, on your expectations. So really rolling up here on safety, making sure that safety is a part of the company culture. And really that's part of your project culture, right? As leaders of your companies, it's one thing to be in the office and say, here's the things we're going to do. It's another thing to be boots on the ground, face to face with your guys and say, these are my expectations. This is how I work. This is how you're going to work when you work for us. Following along with that, employee and craft buy-in to the program, making sure that your men and women in the field are bought into your program. A lot of times you can have a squeaky wheel out there that doesn't want to wear his safety glasses or doesn't wear his gloves, and that can permeate throughout the rest of the culture in your organization. So leadership, a lot of you are leaders of your companies. So leadership from the top, setting the expectations, and then leadership by your craft, identifying who are those people that really kind of lead the crews, right? Who's the guy on the crew that, if he's working the right way, that's going to set the example and set the expectation, and that's going to go through to the rest of the guys, right? Making sure that leadership, in the field is there. Being visible in terms of safety, making sure that, when you're out on your jobs or at your sites that you're available to your men and women, and that you're talking about safety and keeping it up front, right? And keeping it fresh, right? So a lot of times, it might just be, hey, we need to sign this JHA. It's day 50 of this project. We've signed this JHA every day. No one's read it in the last 2 weeks. So that tool is really not a tool anymore, right? So how are you going to talk about safety to keep it fresh in people's minds. And that might be something as simple as, hey, we're not talking about the JHA today. We talked about that 4 to 5 days. We're going to talk about one thing that we're doing today, and we're going to get in good detail, and we're going to have a conversation about how we're going to be safe doing the one thing we're doing today. And then finally, the reporting accountability and the training, right? Having the consistent expectations is where the training comes in, is, having that training with your guys, like Mike said, bringing them into the shop, setting the example. Here's what I expect from you, and then pushing that back out, right? And then when the expectations aren't followed, you have clear accountability. Hey, if I come out to the site and you guys aren't, wearing your proper PPE, the first time I come out, it's, I'm going to talk to you about it. The second time I come out, you're going to get a day off. And the third time I find that you can't follow rules and be part of our culture, you're not going to be part of our company, or whatever works for you, right? But making sure that accountability is clear and that the expectations are clear, right? Because you can't have accountability without clear expectations. And then the reporting, when you're working in these bigger projects, the reporting is critical, right? So if there's an incident, making sure that you're always transparent, that you report up to the GC, or if you're working on a smaller task order, that you report directly to CTA, that you communicate with them, and that you become a partner in the process, right? Everyone wants to know why it happened. It's not a witch hunt. It's to understand and improve and make sure that we're all looking at the process and analyzing what's going on out there to make sure that people are going home safe. So with that, that's probably a good spot to stop. Oh, you know what? I got one more slide here. So last thing on why safety is so important. So we talked about this right at the beginning. We want to send our employees home safe to their families and loved ones every day. That's number one, why we're doing it. Following beyond that, a good safety program is really going to set your reputation, with the craft. It's also going to set your reputation, with the GCs or with CTA. And then finally, there's a direct financial benefit to well-planned work, is that when you have a safe working environment and you have well-planned work, that you're going to have more efficient operations. You're going to have less, time lost to safety incidents. All these things, ultimately turn into money. So the last thing I'll leave you with is why I work safe. So we got some pictures of my family here. A lot of times in-person meetings will take 10 minutes and do these, have you write one down and then kind of talk about it. So as we go into our 5 o'clock break here a little bit late, just think about these things. Why do you work safe? What are you committing to make it happen? And then how are you going to do that? What can you do tomorrow to kind of make that happen? So what I've got here, these are pretty simple. Is just, why I work safe is spend time with my family and friends, to protect the health of my coworkers, and then, to go home safe myself. And what do I commit to make it happen? For my role in the company, I want to make sure that I'm providing well-planned work to our craft. I don't want to send guys out there without a plan. I want to make sure that they know that, we have a plan for A, B, and C, that when things go wrong, we know what the mitigations are and what different things that we have in place to make sure that work is safe for them. When I'm out working, never walking by an unsafe act, making sure that if I see something that's not right, I fix it. And then finally, everybody that I've worked with at Kiewit, in my short 12 years, like I'd say, like 80% of them are the craftsmen that I've been working with from, the first day on the job. I was working for them, now they're working for me. So really it's personal to me. It's looking out for the guy next to me and making sure that they go home safe, because I genuinely do care about them and want to know that that's how they're going to go home that day. So as we go into our break, kind of think about those things, and we'll come back and answer a couple of these questions and start the conversation up again. And Janelle, I don't know how long you put them on break for.
Yep, just a couple of minutes. This was all new. I just thought we can take 2 to 3 minutes, do a stretch, restroom break, and then just come right back at 5:15. And we do have a question. Sebastian, we'll tackle your question when we come back, okay? Beautiful family, Joe.
Yeah, I didn't update these pictures. So my buddy my little guy on the right is 3 now. And I actually don't have my youngest is not even on here.
Oh.
So I got to do that.
Joe, I can't tell which one is you and which one's your brother.
I'm the fat one. No, yeah, I'm in the middle there. You can tell the difference.
I know.
I'm way better looking.
I had no idea your brother was like an identical twin of you.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. And the other one is like, he looks adopted.
I'm actually hopping off, so thanks. This was helpful. But I put that question up there because I bet it's kind of on some of these subs' minds. You know, they see all this stuff that seems fairly overwhelming. I thought it'd be a good point to make that I know that Kiewit does help subs adopt a plan or draft these plans so that it's not, you know, for those who don't have their own safety plan and are first timers to a CTA or a transit project, a company like Kiewit will definitely aid in the development of a plan or at least a review, or even allow, so I don't know if you guys still allow subcontractors to adopt your plan and just kind of sign off on it.
Yeah, we'll hit that again.
All right, thanks, Joe. We'll see you next week.
Are you all set for your show next week?
Yeah,
What's
I'm
your
all
topic?
set. We're just trying to find some good pictures. If you got any good CTA construction pictures, I'll take them.
You guys don't have good, aren't you guys paid to just take pictures? I thought that's the whole point of the consultant.
Well, you know, have you ever heard of COVID-19?
Oh, yeah, that thing. Some of us still have to go to work.
Yep.
Thanks, Sebastian, for joining. And we look forward to having you all next week as well.
Thank you. And we look forward to giving our presentation.
Awesome sauce. Last week, Joe, I didn't do a break, but I was just thinking, and perhaps selfishly, we sit in front of these computers nonstop now, all day, right?
Oh, it's terrible.
Like, all right, when can I use the restroom? When can I grab a glass of water? I don't want to miss anything. So I said, well, maybe going forward, we'll just come up for air for 5 minutes or so and then dive right back in.
No, I think that's good. And this is going like twice as fast as it does in person.
Yeah, right?
So, yeah, and I mean, in person is more conversational. Like, people talk for like a half an hour about the hazards of their job. And then here it's a little harder to pull that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Quick question, though. I know oftentimes this conversation isn't necessarily related to construction, but it's a hot topic considering that, you know, with COVID. Cybersecurity plan, do you see that as either an extension of the safety plans or even an add-on to other kind of risk management plans?
So we have cybersecurity corporately,
okay,
but we don't really, so it's more complicated than that. Depending on, so the federal owners have DFARS, you've got specific regulations, right? CTA has, it's less rigid. I mean, depending on what you have. There's not a lot of contracts that are specifically written with, you know, some of the sensitive stuff. I mean, in terms of like sharing documents and all that stuff, when it hits the street, like it's kind of public information.
Yeah.
So it's not super secure. But in some of the other federal stuff that we do, it's a lot more secure, right? Like when you have, depending on what what federal jobs you're working on, there's different levels of security where it goes everywhere from like everything has to be password on a password protected computer, all the way up to you're not allowed to see the drawings unless you go to a facility and use a federal computer. So it gets a lot more complicated with them. But in terms of like our normal DOT stuff, everything's so public that there's not a lot to steal, right? Like we have our internal stuff, right? Productions and, sensitive personal data. Like we have processes for all that stuff. But, like social security numbers, drug testing, all that is kind of confidential type stuff is controlled, but it's done kind of on a corporate level more than a job.
All right, guys. Well, it's 5:16. I don't see a lot of faces in the cameras, but hopefully you guys are back. I'm going to hand it back over to Joe and to continue on the presentation. We did have two comments pop up. One from our partners in presentations for next week was asking Joe the question of drafting a safety plan and how overwhelming that can possibly be for small businesses. And so he posed the question for Kiewit in terms of what kind of support do they extend to their small businesses to aid them for their safety plans? Are they able to adopt those plans? And so, Joe, I'm not sure if you want to repeat your answer.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I mean, so this whole talk is kind of out of two sides of my mouth here. One is if you're working for a GC, a lot of times they're going to produce the safety plan for the project, which is going to cover a lot of the things that we talked about. It's going to cover emergency management. It's going to cover, the safety organization and who's going to be the safety manager and what the training schedules are going to be like. So in the sense that you join a bigger project, your role is to get your hands on this plan, understand what it is and how you fit into it. The flip side of this is partially training you guys so that when other contracts come out, and you're expected to produce a safety management plan, that you would be capable of doing something like that. And really the best thing to do there is develop your corporate safety processes, right? And your corporate safety plan. And when you're on a Kiewit job or, for that matter, I'm sure a Walsh or Passion or whoever, take advantage of the resources on those jobs. We're there to help, right? We can review your plans. We can comment on them. We write these plans for CTA on every single job that we do. So, number one, steal our plan, look at it and read it and figure out how to adapt it to yourself. But number two, lean on us a little bit to help you develop yours so that, maybe on the first couple of jobs, you just want to adopt ours, but then you can start looking at how this applies to you and you can develop your plan that's prepared for your projects going forward, right? So I don't know if that answers the question. I guess Sebastian was the one that asked it, but if there's anyone else that has any questions or concerns about writing the plan, we can talk about that now. Okay, so if not, I want to jump into the personal safety plan and just kind of see what anybody came up with. If there's some things that they want to share with the group in terms of why they work safe or what they can do to make it happen. I haven't heard from Javier yet.
Hi. Well, that's because we are a architectural firm, so we don't really are as hands into the project as the rest of you guys. So I'm mostly here just to listen and learn as much as possible.
Sure, but I'm sure you have to go do a site visit, don't you?
Yes.
And then you guys have to do all the safety calculations, all the exiting calculations for the station and all of that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So there's ways this fits into what you do. I mean, you might not be writing the safety plan, but I just challenge you to think about that when you're going on a job site, right? Like, what can you be looking at as an architect?
Yeah.
You know, in terms of maybe how constructible your stuff is, or what kind of construction methods are going into what you're doing. You know, how is that buildable, right? I'm sure Rich will get really frustrated with you if you give him like 2 feet to build a wall and he has no space to do it. He can't set up the proper scaffold. He'll be pretty frustrated, right? So just keep that stuff in the back of your minds of what a safe job, you know, what the construction is going to look like and how the design plays into that, right? Anybody else out there that wants to share some of this? Why they work safe?
I work safe because workman's comp is expensive enough, even with a good EMR.
There you go.
Hey, like you said, workers' comp, you know, so I guess we just got a credit for being safe, which is good. They chopped our workers' comp down a little bit, so I guess them just some of the, you know, benefits of working safe and you know, trying to maintain a safe environment, you know, for your employees and the other employees working with you, you know, that's on the project.
Sure. All right, I think we can jump into quality here now. What does quality work mean to your company? Curtis?
Quality just giving a good product, you know, whatever your service is, you know, giving the customer what they ask for and just making sure that, you know, it's I guess it looks good to the eye and it satisfies them.
Right, meeting the specs, right? So when I was in, I get in trouble for putting this one out there, but they're like, in college, you know, one of our professors asked us this question. They said, what does quality mean? And everybody was talking about, like, you know, making the best thing possible or making this the most superior thing. And the professor stopped us all and he said, quality is meeting the specifications. If I paid for a Cadillac, I want a Cadillac. If I paid for a Corolla, I want a Corolla, right? That's what quality is, right? It's meeting the specifications, making sure that the thing that you're producing is what, you know, what was paid for, as Curtis said, right? There's some pride beyond that. You know, you want to make sure that, you know, you're making the best Cadillac or the best Corolla, but when you go and you give them the Cadillac and they paid for the Corolla, that's not what we're talking about here, right? It's meeting the specs and it's doing it in the best way possible. So then the next question here is, how do you approach quality on your work? Do you guys have anything out there that you guys do to ensure the quality?
You gotta know the scope.
Know the scope, right?
You have to know the scope of your work.
So Mike, what do you do to know the scope?
First, well, it depends. If it's a smaller job, then we kind of know the scopes, you know what I mean? If it's a bigger job, well, then I ask for a meeting to walk some of the job to get a better feel for it and make notes so that I can use those, you know, to build a plan to do the job, you know, on time, on budget, and on scope.
So a pre-activity meeting, right? Go
Yes.
through with your owner or your client and make sure that you know the expectations, right?
Correct.
Mike, are you on 100% of the jobs, or do you have jobs where you're not there every day?
No, there's a lot of jobs. The bigger jobs, like I said, I'm on. I go and I.
But you have jobs where you're going to send a guy and you won't be over his shoulder. He has to know what he's doing without you there. Exactly.
And those jobs, usually I have different, you know, I have my A team and my B team, you know, the guys that I have that I trust, you know, have been with me for a long time, understand what I'm looking for. And
Yep. So there's training involved, right? There's
Yes.
training and making sure that those guys understand. And then what do you send those guys to the field with? I mean, besides a saw.
Well, a lot of times, especially on the airport, let's say O'Hare, out there, it's really important because there's so much safety involved that everybody that's involved, especially if you're trying to grow and you're a small group like we are, and you're trying to grow into something more, every aspect of knowing the safety of that the protocols and going through everything correctly, and then doing it correctly all the way through, so that there's no, that you're not pissing off the generals.
Sure.
They're not having to hold your hand.
So do you send them with prints? Do you send them with work lists? Do you send
first they have their classes, then those ones they do have their prints. And what they don't have, they have their tablet. And what they don't have their tablet, they can get from me. I can send to them through the tablets.
So making sure they have the latest drawings, that they know,
correct.
Where they got to do the work. Maybe in cutting, you guys are looking at, do we have the utility locates? Do we have the as-built? Do we know what we're cutting into, right? So that's where the approach to quality comes in, right? What are we doing? The
most
work
locates
planning
and stuff, we overlap. We like to piggyback because I like to see things like that instead of just assuming that they keeping their locates up to date. We'll piggyback and keep ours up to date and give them to them. They like things like that. The little details, lets the customer know that you're staying on top of it for them, and they appreciate the little things like that.
Yeah, and I bet your guys appreciate, if you send a guy to a job and you tell him, hey, you got to go cut for passion at this place, just show up, they'll tell you what to do. That's one way to do it. And then the other way to do it is, hey, you got to go cut for passion. You got 200 feet to cut. Here's a drawing of where it is, right? Your guys are probably feeling that much more prepared, that much more professional to go into that job site, seeing a print, knowing what they need to do, knowing that it's a 2-inch cut, knowing all that ahead of time. Your guys are going to be more prepared. They're going to do a better job.
And now, because of that, they expect you to give them that. If you don't give them details, they start questioning you right away. So, which is nice. So they keep me on my feet. When I don't catch up and I miss something, they bring me back into line.
Right. Rich, how do you make sure that your guys are using the right products?
Oh, well, we go through the specs and find out what's called out, what product, what type. I mean, you got to go through the specifications and figure out exactly what's in there. You just can't just go back, okay, they want this brick. What brick type they want? What type mortar they want? They want coarse grout or they want fine grout? I mean, everything is detailed, specified, and they call it out on the drawings as well. They might have a certain a wall type. They got wall sections and things like that. Partition types, and we go through that. Just thoroughly examining the plans, to find out exactly what the scope. And if you got any questions, then we just RFI like, hey, I'm looking for this product. I see it on this A101, but when I refer back to the specs, it's not listed. I mean, is it a certain supplier or material that you want us to use and incorporate into our bid? Because you got to get pricing for all that material, and the materials, depending on what it is, it can vary. If you ain't got the right material in there, then you can be losing money. They got a regular block. I mean, for me, an 8-inch CMU might cost $1.80, but they got another CMU that costs $2.50 because it is weather treated. Right. So you got a $2.50 block opposed to a $1.80 block, and then you didn't go through the specs and read that it's calling for that $2.50 block. Now it's time for you to send in your submittals. You done purchase the material, and now you short, like, oh man, I'm short $10,000 or $15,000 in material because you didn't thoroughly read the plans and specs.
Right, and you just talked about some other things there, submittals, right? Making sure that You're submitting to your owner and your client and being very clear. Here's what my expectation. This is what I think I need to install, and getting that approved, making sure those documents get out to the field. So when your men go and pick up that block, that they're picking up the $1.80 block or the $2.50 block, that they know which one needs to be there on site, and that they can defend that when they're out there, right?
Correct.
So everything we're talking about is that's planning for quality, right? It's reading the specs, it's training your people, like Mike talked about. It's making sure that we've been through the specifications, we understand what we're building. Part of that's in the pre-bid process. Part of that's then getting that information communicated out to the field. Making sure, maybe it's not a product, maybe it's a technique. Maybe you've got to have a certain type of joint in terms of masonry that we're talking about here that needs to be, an eighth of an inch or a quarter of an inch or whatever it is, that the crew knows that information, right? It's working that that information from the plans and specs all the way out to the hands of the crew. So I think that was some good stuff there. Let's hit this question. What is the difference between quality control and quality inspection? Anybody want to take a shot at that?
Quality control is a process that's set in place. And quality inspection is an oversight of the actual finished product of whatever they may be doing.
Right. So quality control is what you can do, everything we just talked about, it's what you can do ahead of time to make sure that the product will be right. Inspection is just the finishing touch, right? It's just, we did it right, and now somebody's coming and verifying that that's true. You want to be putting your effort into the first part of that, right? You want to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to ensure that that product is coming out correctly, and you're not relying on the inspection to be that catch that, oh no, this is the wrong material or whatever it is. So here's just a little write-up on that. It says, the difference between control and inspection is that control is a continual system of planning for the future. Inspection is just examining the ongoing completed work. So inspection is kind of after the fact, and the control is preventative, right? So we really want to be in that preventative bucket in terms of our quality processes. We want to make sure that everything that we're doing in terms of quality is ensuring that we're delivering the quality product, not so much coming after the fact and verifying that it's done. That's the easy part, right? So all your quality planning needs to be going into that first part. What do you think are some factors that are going to change going forward, right? What will influence the government and the construction industry in the future? This is pretty open-ended, but I'm fishing for an answer here. So this is a slightly less construction one. So Melissa or Beatrice, if you guys want to jump in here, or even Javier.
Well, I feel for starters, now we're going to through a process that it's going to affect future projects, and that's COVID, the world pandemic, and it's changing the way we work. And at the end of the line, it's going to change the whole view of all the fields are getting affected. So it's going to make some changes down the line.
Yeah, so I wrote this question pre-COVID, so that's a very good point. That there's going to be a lot of changes, but really, you're kind of leading me to my point here was that the big thing that's going to happen is that regulations are going to change, right? Things are going to get more restrictive, generally speaking, as we learn more about things, right? Beatrice is talking about environmentally conscious landscaping, right? 25 years ago, nobody would have been talking about environmentally conscious land, or maybe they were, but nobody was listening. But now, people are talking about it, and it's something that, becomes a priority as we understand the importance of new things as we as industries develop, right? So the clients and the customers are going to continue to kind of advance what their expectations are and what their involvement is going to be. The other big change that you could really think about is that all you guys that are working on RPM, whether it's a sign of the future, is that the design build thing is clearly here to stay, right? The amount of coordination and influence that comes from a design build process is whether it's going to more owners or not. CTA's adopted, they've been using it for a long time. There's many other owners that are, and really it's going to change a lot of what the documentation looks like, right? I think, Rich, you talked about really early on in this that you really liked a full set of prints. And you like knowing, hey, this is what I got to build. And I bet you less and less you're seeing the full set of prints, and more you're seeing, hey, I need a wall here and it needs to be compliant to the specs.
Hey, my estimator, he was talking crazy today, like, I don't have no details. I'm like, well, we got to find them. They there somewhere. So, I mean, yeah, but it could be difficult, you want to, and then, you know what, I think it kind of go back based on, and then you can't base it on your knowledge. It's just input, that's why it's design build. You got to get them your input. So if they don't got a clear detail, well, maybe we'll make a suggestion. And that's what they want, the input, the feedback, and then they'll take that based off the contractor's knowledge. They more so looking for our knowledge as well, and work that we've performed over the years and type of walls we install. I mean, even though the architect know that, they still looking for the input from the subcontractors and the specialty contractors, that way they can have a complete set of plans. So I mean, it's beneficial because you get to come to the table, you get to put in, your points of views or whatnot. Whether they get incorporated, who knows? But you at the table with them, So, and I mean, it could be good and bad, So.
Right. And then, I mean, just generally speaking, the amount of regulation that we have now, obviously, you would talk to some people that maybe were working in the 50s or the 60s, and prior to the EPA or prior to, OSHA really developing and all those things, all the, the regulations and what we need to comply with has kind of developed and will continue to develop. So our quality process is really ultimately designed to be able to take all that input of, what is the regulation, what are the client expectations, and boiling that down to making sure that we can deliver the correct product. So here's a slide. We talk about where quality kind of bridges beyond quality. This is a picture off the CTA Blue Line project. You can see there's a man lift on the tracks next to a third rail. There's a piece of precast platform there tipped over. This looks like a safety issue, doesn't it? More than a quality issue? What do you guys think?
We didn't tell them that they cut the precast deck and they pulled their lift up on there, and that's, communications, the safety issues are huge there. Most people don't, when they cut a deck usually they try to remove it within, a certain period of time, not leaving a cut deck just sitting there, whether they had it shorter up or not.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary.
So if we do the 5 whys here, so first thing I would say is there's a man lift on the tracks, right? Why is a man lift on the tracks? Does someone want to do the first why for me? Melissa, why is that man lift on the tracks?
I believe it's on the tracks.
Very simple. Don't try and go too far.
Yeah, it is, because if someone falls on the third rail.
So it's on the tracks because it fell off the platform.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
All
my
right.
vision's impaired. I didn't see that. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
All right.
I didn't get the full picture of it.
That's all right. Beatrice, why did that manlet fall off the platform?
Why did it fall off of the platform?
Yeah, why did that manlet fall off the platform?
Not really certain. Maybe it was too heavy.
That's a good question, right? Maybe it was too heavy.
And maybe it was too close to the edge.
Maybe it was too close to the edge. Maybe that piece of precast wasn't installed correctly. Right?
I'll go with that.
All right, maybe that precast wasn't installed correctly. So let's follow that one. Why wasn't that precast installed correctly? It wasn't installed correctly because the dowel that holds it in wasn't drilled deep enough. And why wasn't that dowel drilled deep enough? Was because they hit a piece of rebar. Okay, and when they hit that piece of rebar, they made a decision to cut the dowel shorter and epoxy it in. So instead of stopping and saying, I didn't get full embedment depth on that piece of rebar, somebody fell on the third rail. That's where quality can go. All right, so following the spec, right? Following the drawing, making sure that you stop, making sure that you're doing stuff 100% correctly, ultimately can go to a safety issue, right? It can go to a near miss fatality. It can go to a variety of different places, but this is an example, right? This is why we want to follow the specification, build what's on the drawing, and not deviate from that. So anyhow, really kind of boiling down what quality work is, we want to build work right the first time. You want to do what you're doing the best you can, but at the same time, you want to provide the owner what they paid for. And then finally, we always want to provide that good quality workmanship, and we want to check our work.
It's really easy to, just a change in the type of machine they were using.
What's that?
They could have went from a hammer drill to a core drill and got their proper depth.
Yeah, right.
Rebar. They didn't do it.
Yep, exactly. So what are we doing to ensure that quality? We're developing this project-specific quality management system, right? And it's going to be tailored to your CTA work and the project specs. So a lot of the same stuff, you want to incorporate your company's plan. You want to incorporate CTA's quality management system requirements. CTA as a transit agency has FTA quality guidelines that we must follow. And then obviously the other, plan specifications, regulations, whether it's, an ACI or a ASTM or an AISC, any of the, steel, fabricator regulations or your concrete regulations or your masonry regulations or your plumbing regulations, the plumbing code, the building code, whatever it is, you need to make sure that we're pulling all that stuff. So kind of similar to the safety plan, you're going to have all these things, the cover page, table of contents, your quality policy statement. You want to have an organizational chart that shows who the quality representatives are for the job and what the responsibilities of the quality program are. So we talked about the FTA quality elements. So the plan, when you develop your plan for CTA, it's going to follow these 15 quality elements. What is your management responsibilities? Is kind of just a statement. Your documented quality management system, what that process is, that's physically your plan. Design control, if you're on a design build job, how is the design going to be controlled to make sure that the latest drawings are in the field? Document control, really making sure that the correct submittals are in and that the stuff that you're using in the field has been approved. What you're doing to manage your purchasing. So how do we make sure that the thing that was bought for the CTA project ends up on the CTA project? And you didn't just go grab, some materials from, the other project that aren't the correct ones for this job. That flows into the product identification and traceability. This is a big deal for Kiewit in terms of, we do a lot of the rail work, so we want to document where the rail is used. So if there's an issue with the rail, we can trace back when that rail was milled, what mill did it come from, things like that. And it may apply to different different materials in terms of concrete. Want to know if you have a bad concrete batch, where that is in the project. Process control, that's your work plans. So that's kind of what we opened this quality conversation with, was what are you giving to your guys to make sure that they know what they need to be building? Are they getting the specifications? Are they getting a checklist or a drawing? What kind of things are we putting out there? Inspection and testing. So there's kind of two layers to this. One is, what is our specified requirements for inspection and testing? Is some of that third party required? Are we welding and we need to test welds, or are we doing concrete and we need to make cylinders? And then the follow on from that is, what are we doing for our self-inspection? How are the guys looking at their work to verify that it's correct? What are we doing in terms of the equipment that we're using? So if you're doing some kind of measurements, are your things calibrated correctly? And do you have the proper documentation to show that? Inspection test status. So this is important a lot of times on these phased jobs. Do you have clearance on that concrete, that it's safe to put trains on it? Or, what is the status of a test that may take a longer time? We deal a lot with signal equipment, so there's a substantial amount of testing that goes into that. What are we doing with our non-conformances? How do we treat them? How do we document them? And then finally, how does that go into the corrective action? So what are we doing to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And finally, maintaining your quality records. So this is your checklists, your documentation, your tests, proving that you're doing the work correctly. There's a couple plumbers on the line here. So a lot of your work might get buried or covered up in a wall. So are we taking good pictures to prove that our work was installed properly? Are we getting inspections, and how are those inspections documented, whether it's a city inspection or a third-party inspection? What kind of tests are we doing? Following on from that, auditing. So on a bigger job, as a GC, we're required to audit our quality processes. So this may trickle down to you as a subcontractor, where we may have an audit set up where we're going to want to go in and see that you are keeping your documentation, where it's being kept. Are you doing all the things that are required to be done, and then documenting that we went and we looked. And then finally, training. So how are we making sure that the quality process is communicated out to the organization, all the way down to the craftsman? And what are we doing to make sure that that information is getting communicated? So the biggest tools for quality here are your work plans, your process plan, your pre-activity meeting. So this is really what you're using to communicate to CTA. So we'll develop a work plan, which may be as simple as a sketch or a drawing that shows what we're doing. Have some narrative to that, so a description of what we're doing, step-by-step description. That'll be developed into what CTA calls a process plan. So the process plan includes, I think there's 20 or 25 questions in the specification right now. How are you dealing with a variety of things, whether it's the community, traffic control, submittals, do you have all your submittals? What is the noise impact on the neighborhood? What kind of conflicts might you have with adjacent work? Are there compatibility issues with your materials? These things are all listed in the CTA spec. So the process plan is just kind of the 25 questions, you address them, and then you have a pre-activity meeting. So Mike talked about this, meeting with the client before you go to work, talking through what you're going to do. So this is a formalized process with CTA. You're required to have a pre-activity meeting before every major operation. So you'll go in, you'll develop this process plan, they'll distribute it, people comment on it, and then you sit in a room together and you talk about what work's going to be done and kind of communicate what that process is going to look like, and you have a conversation about what that's going to be. This is a really important step. Whether or not it's required by contract, I'd highly encourage it for any owner. Meeting with the client and talking through what's going to be done so that there's no surprises when you show up. We've all reviewed our submittals. We've all talked about what the project's going to be, and that's kind of have a consistent level of understanding among everybody. A couple other things that would go in there. You want to have your crew makeup, your equipment and tools and materials, any of the relevant specifications, what you're doing for access, any change documentation. So I think we talked about RFIs earlier on in here. If you have RFIs that are changing what your drawings are, that you want to have that stuff gathered up and available so that it's in the field, right? So your foreman or your men know that the RFI has been asked and answered and what that change is, right? And then finally, your JHA kind of goes hand in hand with this. So you're doing all this planning for the quality part of the job, but you're also, at the same time doing your JHA. Again, you want to make sure that your crew is very involved in this so that anything kind of field knowledge-wise is incorporated in this plan, that they know, a two-way street, right? All the information from the specs gets to the guys, and all the, kind of means and methods of the guys gets into the work plan so that you can communicate that to CTA. So the last thing you want to do is have a CTA inspector or someone come out and say, hey, we didn't approve this type of method. That's what your work plan's for. You say, hey, we were going to do our work this way. Look, we wrote it down. We talked about it at a pre-activity meeting. This is why we're doing it. And then take some of that ambiguity or that kind of headbutting with the inspector out of it, right? Because it's been taken care of. The planning's been taken care of, and it's been communicated and agreed to ahead of time. And then again, adding pictures to these is the best way to do training or teaching or documentation. And finally, making sure that this plan does get reviewed in the field and it gets incorporated and implemented into what we're doing. So in summary, the keys to good quality of performance, knowing your operation. So that goes back to reading the specs, looking at your drawings, making sure you know what we're building. Creating good quality analysis. So that's everything we talked about there with building out that work plan. And another thing that goes into that really is kind of knowing your tolerances, right? How many times have you gone out to a job and, the drawing says that a wall or something needs to be exactly here, and you got to be a half or a quarter out, or maybe your tolerance of your material is not that tight, so there's some variability in what you're doing. And going in and doing a good quality analysis would involve looking up, what those tolerances are, whether it's from the specification or, if you're working with concrete, a lot of times it's going all the way back to ACI, or if you're working with masonry, going back to your governing specifications to say, hey, this wall is allowed to be, a 1/4" out of the plumb, or whatever it is, that those things going into your work so that it's clear when you go to the field what that needs to look like. Conducting the pre-activity meeting to get the owner on the same page. And then finally, another tool we use is the checklist. So, making a very simple list of what the specification requires so that you can go out to the field and verify, yes, we use the correct material. It's supposed to be whatever that material is. We placed it at the correct temperature. We installed it at the proper, spacing of joints. We made the wall properly plumb, whatever it is. Want to make sure that your subs and suppliers are involved in this too. So if you have any materials that, maybe you're getting from a third party, that information from the specifications has been reviewed by them. and then continuously checking and verifying that it's going correctly as we're building the work. And really, this is on the crews to make sure that they have ownership of what they're building and that they're documenting and checking on what they're doing. So why is it important? Number one, it's the right way to do business. You know, no one wants to be known as someone that's not delivering what they were paid to do. It's the least expensive way to build the work because you build it one time. If you're not installing quality work, then you're getting involved in rework, and rework is always more expensive. Not only because you're doing it twice, but because you probably you messed up your schedule along the way. Saves your companies and the clients time and money, and really it becomes your reputation again that you're a high quality contractor and you're going to be delivering work that people are going to want to pay for in the future. And then finally, as back to my picture that we started this with, building work right is also a safety issue at the end of the day. So we want to make sure that we're doing things correctly. So that's kind of what I have. 5 minutes early here, so I guess we could open it up and see, are there questions or statements or anything anyone wants to add?
I have a question, please, Melissa Fuller.
Sure.
We are real estate developers, and as you know, we contract general contractors to do the work. And my question to you is what steps can we take, or what is the process that we can ensure that the contractors are actually doing, following safety measures? And I'm sure, we ask for their plans and their management safety plans and quality plans, but how can we ensure that this is being practiced on a daily basis and not have that fall back on us?
Yeah, so I'd say, your first tool is your contract, right? At the most basic level, when you sign up a contractor, you want to make sure that the expectations are clear of what they're doing. The second thing is being knowledgeable yourself, right, or your organization, so that you can go out and you can look at your sites and understand when things are correct and incorrect. And then I'd say beyond that, if you're doing repeat business, there are reputable contractors out there that will follow the rules and will build their work safely. And you want to prioritize, bringing your business to those type of organizations as you go forward. I don't know if that helps you too much, but
it's a start. I appreciate it, and
I'd say if you're looking to get more educated in general, there's something called an OSHA 10-hour and an OSHA 30-hour certification. So number one, you could ask your contractors for those certifications, right? Say that you require that the site supervisor is OSHA 30 certified. And then in part of that training is learning about what the regulations are from OSHA, and then being able to know what a site should look like. And you could get that training yourself as well, so that way you know what you're looking for, right?
Exactly.
At a total bare bones minimum requirement, I think that would be the best thing to start with. Say an OSHA 30 training would get you knowledgeable in what the site needs to look like, and then requiring that from your contractor.
Okay. And what type of training should my project manager have in terms of the OSHA 10 and OSHA 30? Sounds like a good start.
Yeah, I think that's a great spot for safety. And then in terms of quality, property development, you're going to be hitting a lot of different trades, so it's not as cut and dry, but I think there's a lot of professional development type of courses that are out there, so you can find some that are relevant to the building trades, right? So if you're pouring concrete, maybe doing an introduction to concrete or something like that. And, some of the other more in terms of quality, whatever it might be in terms of plumbing or electrical or things like that.
Okay, for this project manager you're referring to?
Yeah, right, yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Also, Melissa, actually a good segue that part of the extension of this Small Biz Ed series is that we will facilitate an OSHA 30 training for you all who opt in at no cost. So that'll come post the completion, but you have to complete the entire training in order to opt into the OSHA 30 training. So it can be whether it's you or someone else from your team, but that may be an opportunity for you to kind of grab perhaps the things that you should even be looking for, or how best to protect yourself over their plan, their safety plans.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments? I know we are at 6 o'clock on the head, but I don't want to miss anyone's feedback or questions.
Hey, everybody.
Who we have there?
Hey, I'm Divvy. I'm your friendly neighborhood railroad photographer out here in Chicagoland.
Awesome. Joe, there's your pictures.
Yeah.
Sebastian needed those.
I'm your picture person, so.
Awesome. Well, they'll be presenting next week, Divvy. So make sure during our introductions, that's your 60-second pitch opportunity right there, because you already know that they have a hot need for you. Okay.
I'll get it. That's next week, right?
Yep. They'll be returning.
Okay, I'll do it.
Awesome. All right, guys, a couple of things before we let go today, just to kind of think about the conversation that Joe, and thank you, Joe, for the information that you shared. Obviously, quality and safety is huge in government contracting, but even more specifically with CTA, considering our ridership and all the elements that kind of go into it. So that is huge and priority for us. And I think at any point when you all are pursuing opportunities, whether it's a sub or directly with the agency, understand what's meaningful to them, right? So if you know safety is huge for that agency or for that prime or for that particular opportunity, that's what you kind of want to pitch to or lead with, right? You want to ensure that you have their interest in protecting and mitigating any risk exposures by providing and actually implementing those safety plans. So my little quirky assignment for this week is to I hope that most of you all have your safety plans, but I want you to have them out for a little bit of discussion, or for anyone who wants to volunteer to present and kind of talk about how they discovered and put theirs together. But we're going to pick on you all about your safety plans. And if you don't have a safety plan, here's the perfect opportunity for you all to kind of create one. I know the question was asked if you can adopt a primes, and perhaps that may be an opportunity for you in the future. But right now, a quick Google search may provide a bare minimum of a template for you to build off of. And Joe, maybe you can give any comments on your thoughts if templates work. I always say templates only work as much as you work it, right? Because you have to go in and make sure the information is very related to you and what the opportunity is. But I think that it would behoove you all if you all did not have or think about those safety plans, as most opportunities request them.
Yeah, I mean, they need to be, there's some basics that you can build off of, but you really want to tailor it to what your organization is dealing with and what your hazards are. So I think I have a template I can shoot out to the group here. I'll send it to you.
Oh, that would be awesome.
And then you guys can at least have something to start with there.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you, Joe. Next week we have week 3, no guesstimating, nailing your estimates. So guess what that conversation is going to be about? Estimating with our transit capital partners who joined us this evening. So again, they'll be returning. So Divvy, have your question. Other than that, that's all I have. Let's give Joe a round of applause, a big, huge thank you for your time and presentation this evening. I see the hands clapping there.
I told Janelle she needs to mail you guys lunch, because normally we get lunch with this.
He did put a bid in for you guys. He did put a bid in for you guys. Typically we would, but hopefully we will be having a graduation for you all a week or two after we complete the program. So perhaps we'll have something special in mind for you all then. It's all I have. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Same time, same place next Tuesday. If you have any questions in between time, feel free to reach out to myself and or my colleague, Chanel. Have a good night, guys.
Good night.
Thanks, Joe. Good night.
See you guys.
Night, everybody.